So greetings and welcome to Outside the Class. It's our December 13th, 2022 episode. It also happens to be my dad's 81st birthday. Happy birthday, John Ward. We continue on our Matthew series. We're still in episode 20, Weeds and Wheat. This is part 2 with Tim Mackie. With this way of doing things, you can watch the video before we begin to start chatting. We hope to keep these to around 15 minutes or so. Easy to catch, and even easier to catch up on. Again, we have the Dusty Feet live every Thursday night at 7 p.m. And don't forget, in the description below, are links to all audio, video, and source documents that we use here in the Dusty Feet. We want to make sure that any material you use here is properly credited to those folks who work so hard to bring it to us. Without their efforts, learning we do here does not happen. So don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell icon if you want a reminder. And as always on the Dusty Feet, this is a place where we can safely explore the endless ways of God, the interconnection of His creation, where belief understandings may be challenged, divine misunderstandings may exist, and traditional teachings might falter as we pursue connection, context, and community with God and each other here in an environment of grace and love. So here we go with some more Outside the Class on the Dusty Feet. And as always, it is expected that you watch the reference videos first so you get a context for this discussion and to hear the perspective of the originator. In this case, right, it's Tim Mackie. So I do link all of the videos for each week on TheDustyFeet.com on the Outside the Class page as well. So if you have not yet, pause this, click on the link in the descriptions below or TheDustyFeet.com, and when you come back, we can chat. And we're back. Okay, so now we're going to get on to a really uncomfortable topic, right? We're going to talk about hell. We want to talk about heaven and what we think it'll look like, who's going to be there, what we imagine it might be, but not so much about the other. Yet, yes, we really want hell to exist. But why? The truth is, in our minds, we want hell to exist. It's just not for us, it's for them, right? Of course, it's not us, it's a judgment thing, and that's always for them. I really enjoyed Tim's graphic, the representation of what the worldview of Christianity is, what Christians believe, and what the story of the Bible is. The picture, sadly, honestly probably have to admit, it is true. It is the picture that we've painted of what we want the world to see. Our collective churchianity past, has actually perpetuated this stereotypical view. And maybe more so, again, because of what we want it to be. But the scary part that Tim brings up is probably that many actually believe this diagram, this picture. But like Tim mentions, and I think makes clear, that the problem with the picture, is the Bible, the whole Bible story. Well, Tim mentions as well that we so often take parts of the story out of context. We make a verse say this, a psalm or a proverb say that, a parable fit my expectation, yet often we can be very inaccurate. So back to hell. Our Dante version of hell does not even enter the collective graphic picture until we're well into the Greek influence on the known world at the time, right? And as we are living proof, even this many millennia later, right? It's not the graphic representation that grabs us, but what it actually represents. We want to see, we want to know that there will be punishment. But of course, again, that's not for us, that's for them. But why the need? Uh, I'm I'm not sure why we don't see the hell concept much earlier in the Bible, right? The thought of punishment in the afterlife, um, that all of those things that people get away with, right? They would be dealt with later. And it's not, right? We don't see that in the Hebrew Bible. But it would eventually creep into our collective understanding. We are, and I'm not sure it's surprising really, but we very much just want it to be true because they just can't get away with that. And that seems to go along with that logic that God would, of course, want that as well. Since all of those people that get away with so much, that he needed a way to make sure that they got what was coming to them. But like Tim said, let's drop the agendas, come into the house, and hear the story. So I want us to remember that we're not really talking only about the Jesus story, right? We're talking about God's story that has actually been this way from the very beginning. That Jesus is just reiterating, he's refocusing, he's reminding us of how committed God is to his good creation and that his love for us will define our existence now in our time, each time everybody's lived through and forward. In Tim's graphic, he explains it as he draws it, right? That we are living out our lives, that we do more good than bad, and that we have the correct views of God, Jesus, Yeshua, that good things will happen to us and will eventually end up in heaven. And if we live our lives doing more bad than good, and we have the incorrect views or beliefs about God, Jesus, Yeshua, that we'll end up in hell. And hell needs to encompass eternal torture to make sure that all of the badness is dealt with. But Tim reminds us that on any given day with Jesus, he's not preaching about heaven and hell. He's talking about the kingdom. That kingdom that Jesus said was here. That kingdom that has been a focus of the Hebrew Bible for millennia. That God has been preparing a people to be representatives, priests, that would serve the nations, to be the example, the flame, to have the Messiah come to reign. And in case that was misinterpreted, it's not reign, R-A-I-N, as in fire and brimstone, but to reign, R-E-I-G-N, to lead and guide. I love this graphic that Tim has used so many times. That heaven and earth, they overlap. The two domains would coexist. They'd have its own beings and its own structure. Ours, humankind, we were created for this good, Tov, place, right? This is ours to co-reign and manage with God's ways at the forefront. or not? It seems to be an interesting, because it seems not to be created as a place to see how things turn out, and the goodies get to graduate to heaven and the baddies get to be demoted to hell. It seems just by that story that we have create another interesting problem. And again, that's because the entire story is the Bible. Even after that Jesus does come back again, and God sorts out the weeds from the wheat, that we're right back with heaven and earth, overlapping, both with a fresh start. Have you ever stopped to ask, and this is going to be a very awkward question for some, why is heaven getting a redo, a facelift? If heaven is a perfect place, then why a new one? That's probably too deep a rabbi hole to jump into on this episode. Okay, but I'm willing to give a launching thought for those to chew on. Okay. Remember that the adversary that turned on God, that pesky serpent, I'm not sure we really thought it was just a snake, right? And those other third of those messengers that followed him, that failed the test as well, to not follow God in his ways, there's no difference in either place. So it seems heaven could use a bit of a house cleaning as well. And that's probably not the picture one had in their heads. There's so many other things that are part of the entire story, the whole story, the Bible story. And as we've been seeing, that whole story leads not only to Jesus, visit number 1, but as we read past Matthew, we have Jesus, visit number 2, and a very vague glimpse into a new part with heaven and earth, those two counterparts at the beginning, they're beginning again. It seems the ones left out of the picture that have been pushed out of the picture, seems those sorted out between the weeds and the wheat, and those are not for us to harvest. They're not part of the story going forward. If what we like to say is true, better one day in your house than 1,000 elsewhere, it would seem the most tragic thing that could ever happen to us is not to be there, to never be there. Is there really a punishment greater than having God turn his back on you, to not even be considered by him? Hell, whatever images that culture and tradition have created over the millennia, they seem pale to not being in the new picture that John alludes to at the end of his revelation, right? To not be there. That scares me worse than any hell picture could ever be. As Tim said, hell has no place in God's good world. So again, our point to ponder. And again, this will continue to be our mantra for a while, because we need to remember it. We need to make no judgments where you have no compassion. And thanks for being with us today on Outside the Class on Dusty Feet.